terms of methodology, Kagir, you asked about the methodology. 9,000 interviews conducted between the 23rd, what did I say to you, 23rd and 27th of May. They're generally computer-assisted telephone interviews, okay? So it is done using a method called CATI, which means that we call the respondents. Indeed, that is perhaps the only way we can expedite it in that short a time frame, but also because the questions were not many. The second question you then asked is, what was the success rate? The success rate generally for us is high because we go out with a specific percentage or sample that we have to achieve. So if there's a drop-off, we then substitute that drop-off for that particular sample area with another one to achieve the sample. So if our sample target was 9,000, we still wanted to achieve the 9,000, and it means therefore that if a respondent drops off for whatever reason, the rule of thumb is very simple, that we don't bias a respondent. We give the respondent 3 chances. So assuming we reach out and call you and you say, I'm busy, we call you 3 times. We cannot substitute you with somebody else. We call you 3 times. If after the 3rd time we are still unable to reach you, you are substituted with someone who would be similar to you in terms of your demographics. And therefore, we still try to achieve our 9,000 because 9,000 was our sample. Okay? So that then becomes our success rate. We are not doing it and saying we wanted to achieve 9,000, but we have only been able to because we called Kagia 3 times and we couldn't reach him, and there were maybe 100 of them. We only achieved 8,900, for instance, right? Because we want to be sure that when we are doing our analysis by the different administrative regions, the proportion to size remains as is and does not distort the numbers that we are looking at, right? Are you getting it? There are surveys where the success rate is then determined because we'll say we tried and all we could get was 50% of the sample.
So is it fresh database or existing database for the sample size?
Fresh in what way?
Did you use a sample size that you had previously in terms of database, or did you gather fresh database for this?
We have a database right now ourselves, which I think is over maybe 1 million people, right? How do they qualify to be respondents in the survey? First of all, for you to be a qualified respondent, you must not have participated in a survey in the last, is it 3 months? 3 months, okay? So you are not a recycled respondent, right? And then secondly, the determination of whether you're going to be a respondent or not, Kagia, is not done by us. It's done by a computer algorithm, which is called a dialer. So the dialer then will run through all the contacts that we have and select the contact. If it knows it needs to take 200 contacts from Nairobi, it will select randomly the contacts in Nairobi and assign it to all the people in the call center who are the researchers. Okay? So that then is the question on that. Funding, I started by saying this was an omnibus. We are conducting another omnibus in 2 weeks. What happens with an omnibus is we reach out to various stakeholders, media owners, civil society, political parties, any interested party, and we say we are going out and our survey is going to be 9,000. Do you have any questions that you may want to write? And of course, they pay for their questions. So different parties have different questions that they run on, but they enjoy from economies of scale. It is cheaper than doing your own survey. Yeah, it's the same way if you're going to Mombasa, it's cheaper if you buy a ticket and go into a bus than if you hire a car and go alone. That is why it's called an omnibus. Yeah, so in this particular case, we had two questions which were our questions, or the four questions. Key issues of concern, campaign agenda, intention to vote, and popularity. Those are Infotrak questions which we have invested in within the omnibus. There were many other questions in that omnibus which are not ours, which we cannot share with you. Okay? The other day, we released a survey which was not an omnibus, it was a proprietary survey with a media house, and that data then belonged to them. It was not our data. We could not even have a session like this with you. Okay, so that is how omnibuses work, and most pollsters do that. When we want to have the comfort to call all of you, we then invest in an omnibus. Because if somebody else is paying for it, the data belongs to them. They then decide how they use that data. In many cases, we don't share it. But when we do share, we will tell you we've done it with CMD like we did yesterday, or we've done it with whichever person who has funded the survey. Right? The other question that was asked is what could have resulted in the fall in popularity of Ruto? I would perhaps put it, your guess is as good as mine, but I would put it at, we can see that the issue of selection of running mates obviously had some sort of influence on the perception and the feelings of popularity of candidates. So the picking of Rigathi as running mate has not necessarily worked in the favor of Raila by increasing his popularity in Ruto strongholds. What it has done for Ruto, I don't know who asked the question, I'm trying to look at. What it has done for Ruto is that there is an increase now in undecided voters in his stronghold. So we see, if you recall, I had said that in Central, the undecided vote, or in the mountain region, the undecided vote was now standing at 20%. Ruto was at 52%, and Raila was at 20%. So I hope that answers your question. Are you with me? Are we together? Has it answered your question? Eh? It may answer your question. Yeah? So you've picked your running mate. I'm not saying now I've left you. I'm just thinking through whether I'm still going to be with you. So the undecided vote in the case of Ruto's stronghold, especially in Mountain, has increased somewhat, but it has not gone elsewhere. Yeah? So we see that when we did the survey before, they were both at 42-42. Raila has maintained at 42. Ruto has gone down to 38. And God knows whether all the activities that are taking place now will result in his numbers going up, or that indeed the activities that Azimio is doing between Martha and Raila may indeed endear part of the strongholds of Ruto, endear to the women. We've seen that 25% of women are undecided. They've not yet made their decision as significantly as we would have expected. We would want to see whether that will change with all the campaigns that are taking place. Okay? Then I think the other question that was asked was, is debt an issue? So we see that debt in itself has not been mentioned as an issue per se, but what we do see is issues emanating around the economy are all over the place. High cost of living, cost of doing business, poverty reduction, all these things I think are kind of linked to debt. So in essence, if you go and talk to common mwananchi, unless you prompt them and say, is debt an issue to you, I'm doubtful many people will talk about debt as an issue. What they'll talk about is what is hurting them. And what is hurting them is that when they go to buy things today in the shop or supermarket, 100 shillings cannot buy for them what it could buy for them before. And we know that that is linked to the many things, including the cost of debt that we currently have in the country. Okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.